Is Jameis Winston the biggest dynasty buy this offseason of all quarterbacks? All that and more in this episode of Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallblast. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Marcus Mosher. You could follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Give the show a follow at Locked On Dynasty. And of course, check us out on YouTube, where we are currently streaming. You guys can check out my new office from my new house. Just saying. There's literally nothing on the walls, so there's nothing to behold. But
Is that a way for you to tell the listeners, hey, to send you like a jersey or a helmet, and you'll put it in the backdrop of your video?
Marcus, that's a really good plug. And that I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I mean, man, that would be just such a heartwarming gesture, guys. Help me decorate my wall. Help me. This is bland. It's gray. It's bleak. But you know what's not bleak, Marcus, is our outlook on the New Orleans Saints. Because I have to say, while I was researching this episode, we're going to talk about our dynasty buys, sells, and holds for the New Orleans Saints, continuing on with that series. So if you missed any of our episodes, please go back and check them out. By the way, doing the NFC South this week, as I was researching the New Orleans Saints, I was so shocked at how interesting this roster is. And I really like it. I really like this whole team. And Marcus, I'm just going to give you a spoiler. I didn't have any sells that I could think of. I have one sell,
I
but
do.
It's sort of what
Don't worry, I got one.
It's a sell, but it's a sell that I don't want to sell.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. On my rosters, it hurts. But
this is a team that I really like this season. I've already went to bet online and I've placed a bet on their win total over 8.5 wins. I put a bet on them to make it playoffs and maybe sprinkled a bet or two on them to win the NFC South. I love this team. I'm so excited to talk about them. So, Kate, give us your biggest dynasty buy for the Saints.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite buys, and I've been talking about this guy a lot because, man, Marcus, I think the disrespect is ridiculous here, and that is Michael Thomas, wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints, who I think people have forgotten about. I think they've forgotten about him because, well, Marcus, it's been a really long time since he's played football.
Yep.
We have not seen him on the football field for a very long time, and that's like the saddest thing ever because he was on an absolute tear. Michael Thomas, he's been rehabbing an ankle injury that he suffered back in 2020, missed the entire 2021 season due to some setbacks in that rehab process. He's still not 100%, which I think has everybody sweating it out a little bit. But I do think the reports that he is going to be ready probably by training camp. I'm hopeful that this means that we are actually going to see Michael Thomas on a football field this year. Again, not super pumped. I know there are so many red flags here. Not super pumped about the fact that he's not yet ready, but we have to remember, like, this dude's ankles were torn up, like literally torn up, and he continued playing through that horrific ankle injury. I believe he had 2 ankle injuries, right? Like, weren't both ankle? Yeah. Wanted to play with Drew Brees, so the dude just stayed on the football field, which I'm going to admit, probably not good for his long-term prospect of rehabbing that injury, but played through all of that, had, a major ankle surgery. And you know what, Marcus? I've heard that ankles are pretty important to wide receivers and the running mechanisms that are in place for them. But look, Marcus, like I get all the red flags from the health perspective, but outside of health, is there any concern about Michael Thomas? Because he's sitting as the wide receiver 45. He is 29 years old. But listen to this, Marcus. Dating back to the 2017 season, and again, this is about, Michael Thomas has missed a complete season in 2021. Michael Thomas still ranks 6th in receptions over that span of time, dating back to 17, among all wide receivers, 10th in receiving yards.
Mhm.
Like, that's freaking bananas. The guy has barely played football in a very, very long time. I like Michael Thomas still ranks 21st in receiving touchdowns, which is crazy because the time he played in 2020, he didn't score any. Like,
Yep.
this dude is an absolute freak. He like, as long as he is on the football field, I think we need to buy into him as a wide receiver. And Marcus, I don't think there's any wide receiver in that range of players around wide receiver 45, 46 that has the kind of upside that Michael Thomas does.
All right, this is really fun because I love it when we start off the show with a big disagreement
Ooh.
because Michael Thomas is one of my biggest sells, not only for the Saints, but in all of Dynasty right now. I just think there's so many flashing red lights that I just want to get off of him as quick as I can. I mean, you
But
mentioned
Marcus,
some,
you're not
go
gonna
ahead.
get anything. That's the issue.
But maybe, but if I can get something, I'm happy because I don't see it happening again for Michael Thomas. Typically, when you see somebody miss 18 months of football, they don't all of a sudden come back and they're the same player. They're a diminished player. They have a smaller role. And I think the moves the Saints made this offseason tell you a lot about what they think of Michael Thomas long term, right? They gave up a king's ransom to go get Chris Olave. They signed Jarvis Landry. I don't think you make those moves if you feel like Michael Thomas is going to be back to being an all pro player. Okay, there's just so many warning signs here between obviously the health, but the age. He's 20, he's 29. That's when receivers really start to drop off. We've seen his efficiency drop in 3 straight years, or sorry, excuse me, 4 straight years. From 2017 to 2019, he was averaging 160 targets per season. I just don't think he's going to get that kind of volume in this new offense with Sean Payton gone, with Drew Brees gone. I just don't see that. And so if I have a receiver that's losing efficiency, losing his target share, getting older, not making as many plays off the catch, and still not cleared to practice, I would rather just trade him for, hey, if I can get Christian Kirk right now, thanks. If I can get Adam Thielen, perfect. If I can even get DeAndre Hopkins, who's a little older but going to be healthy at some point this season, I will take that. I'm just out on Michael Thomas.
I mean, that's totally fair. The only thing that I keeps coming back to me is that, again, it's really hard to find anybody with the kind of upside that Michael Thomas has. We know he's obsessed with football. We know he's a competitor. We know his ego is like as big as a mansion. I don't know, some rich person's mansion. Um, we know that this dude is going to want to be back on the field. I don't think there have been any questions about his work ethic or anything like that. Obviously, there's been questions about his team, his relationship with the team, but you mentioned the moves they've made. I think there's another move that they made that kind of indicates to me that they're planning on Michael Thomas being around. They converted almost $15 million of his salary into a signing bonus this year, which effectively pushes that into the future. Would they have done that if they don't plan for Michael Thomas to be around? Because
Maybe they just needed. I mean, they were in such a big
they
cap.
needed cap space, but
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Thomas, I just think that I
Let,
don't see what the risk is
let me
to
ask you
either
this
trade
question,
for
Kate.
him, hold on to him. I don't see any risk whatsoever.
At what point would you be willing to be like, you know what, I have to move him? Like, if he's not ready to go by August, like he's still not practicing when we get to training camp, at that point, would you be concerned? Because that would be, I mean, we're getting into like 18, 19 months of him not doing anything on the football field.
If he's not ready for training camp, I'm officially concerned. But Marcus, the thing that has me in more of a buying pattern for Michael Thomas is the fact that the return just isn't fantastic right now. Like, I mean, you're going to get 2023 second round pick. Okay. Like, what is the upside of my second round pick? Like LaVisca Chenault in a second for
Yeah, I
Michael
don't want that.
Thomas in a third. Like,
I would rather flip him for another receiver that can help you this year. For example, Hunter Renfrow is being drafted several spots behind him, right? I would just rather have Hunter Renfrow going forward straight up. And I'm not even sure it's
really
all that close.
interesting because you mentioned all of the weapons that the the Saints added, and
Mhm.
that was a detour for you on Michael Thomas, but here you're still in on Hunter Renfrow. See, I think I'm just saying there's no risk. Like we've seen more upside from Michael Thomas than we have from Hunter Renfrow. And I'm not
We've
saying
seen
that
it. It's
Hunter
just been
Renfrow is not a great wide receiver because I think, his ability to showcase those talents with a premium target share this year showed you exactly the kind of wide receiver that Hunter Renfrow is. But again, that team made a move to trade for Devontae Adams. They don't view, I don't think they view Hunter Renfrow as the overall wide receiver one for that team. I'm in on Michael Thomas at the cost, but
okay.
I 100% get it. It's just for me, it's coming back to upside, and I keep looking at that. I mean, ahead of the big injury, dating back to 2017. Again, he was a wide receiver one in over half his games with the team, wide receiver two in 25% of the games. Like that was a very safe player with a very, very, very,
Yep.
very, very high floor. Like that's hard to beat. I'm I'm
You're in on
interested to
Michael
hear what our
Thomas.
list.
Yeah, yeah, I'm out. I want to hear what the listeners say. So please
He's
tweet us
basically
and let us know.
free,
Yeah.
guys. Free is
Uh,
for me.
All right, let's move on. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Rock Auto. With the ever increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local auto parts store to stock up on all the parts you need. But Rock Auto has everything from engine control modules, brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Best of all, prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Kate. So I gave you my dynasty sell in Michael Thomas. Can you give me your dynasty sell with the Saints?
As I said, I'm not too keen on selling any of these any of these roster pieces because it just feels like the weaponry that they have. This is the best, I think, overall roster we've seen for the Saints in a really long
Mm-hmm.
time. The depth at wide receiver, Alvin Kamara, all the talent in the world, Jameis Winston, who I mean, say what you want, but he was playing really well before the torn ACL last year. But I gotta say, I'm looking to move on from Alvin Kamara, in
Mm, mm.
maybe not all of my leagues. I still want a couple shares, but we definitely need to be, I think, a little bit concerned. Looking at players who are aging, my biggest question usually is, can they help me now? Alvin Kamara, that question mark is still looming. Like, we have no idea what to expect from Alvin Kamara and a possible suspension in the 2022 season,
It's
Marcus.
been
We
one of
don't
the most
know.
underreported stories is that, like, he could be facing a big suspension, and I know it's probably because of the Deshaun Watson stuff that's really, overshadowing this, but
Yes.
we could be I mean, there's a good chance that Kamara misses a big chunk of the season.
There's a very good chance of that. And Marcus, it's one of the situations that I'm kind of puzzled by because I don't feel like it's really necessarily impacted his overall ADP. He's going to be 27 heading into the season. That's one of the oldest running backs that we see going in this range, still being drafted as an RB1 in dynasty leagues. Like he is absolutely aging. He ranks top 10 in rush attempts,
Mhm.
dating back to when he was drafted in 2017. I think that there's an interesting just aspect going on here. Obviously, like his ADP has dropped over the offseason. I think that's probably more due to age, but I mean, the suspension here is what makes me want to move on right now instead of later on because we've heard 6 games being thrown around. I do think once that suspension comes through, there are going to be many more concerns from dynasty managers in general because you're not going to have that win now value with Alvin Kamara. And now you have an aging running back who has touched the ball a million times
Mhm.
over the last few seasons. I think, obviously, plenty of those touches were receptions, but I also think we have to project a decreased receiving volume. He's had at least 80 receptions every single year since he was drafted, and I don't necessarily know that we can expect 100 targets for him. Um, every season moving forward with the assets they have in place. I'm
It's fair.
just no, thank you.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. I'm probably more likely to buy him once the suspension gets announced or once we get some news because, man, I still think he is a very productive player. Like we saw last year, okay, in the 6 games that he played with Jameis Winston at the beginning of the season, I mean, he was averaging 110 yards per game. He scored 5 touchdowns in those 6 games. In fact, he was averaging over 4 receptions per game. It really dropped off his passing volume or receiving volume once they were playing with Trevor Simeon, a little bit Ian Book and Taysom Hill. Like those guys just weren't throwing to the running backs very often. So I still believe when he's on the field and Jameis Winston's under center, you're getting somebody who has a legitimate chance to be the number one scoring running back in any single week. So if his
You have
value,
the concern though that I mean, this was definitely the one year that I think we saw more of a shift in his usage, like much more heavily used as a pure rusher, had
yes,
240 carries on the season. But Marcus, we saw a big drop in his efficiency once he was kind of
yes,
used as a proper running back. Had averaged, right around 5 yards per carry in every single season. And then last year we see him drop to 3.7 yards per carry once he actually saw a solid workload. Like
hmm
that, I think all of those things should be question marks. But like for me, Alvin Kamara would be a sell kind of regardless, just based on where he's at in his career. And because we've seen how quickly these running backs drop off. Like it's very fast, it's furious. I'm not saying that Alvin Kamara is there yet, but I want to beat this to the punch.
there's only one running back that's being drafted behind him that I would trade straight up for Alvin Kamara, and that's Aaron Jones. Outside of that, I there's just not too many guys I love. And let's run through it on Dynasty League Football. He's being ranked as RB 15, Antonio Gibson RB 16,
I'll take Kamara there, but I'm like historically low on
yeah,
Antonio Gibson and always have been.
Kenneth Walker,
I'll take Kenneth Walker,
Travis Etienne,
Travis Etienne,
Aaron Jones, who I mentioned,
Aaron Jones,
David Montgomery,
Alvin Kamara.
yeah, Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh,
See, that's the range. It's just
dang.
too
I'll
it's
take
too much.
Ezekiel Elliott just
Oh,
because I
wow.
know. Just because I'm projecting this like for me, it's kind of like 1A, 1B. I would take Kamara at face value over Ezekiel Elliott. I think if you can get a good offer for both, you should sell. But um Ezekiel Elliott, I think I'm going to have more performance from in this coming season. I'm not worried about a 6-game suspension with Ezekiel Elliott. He's still going to touch the ball a million times. Um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And that's not to say that I trade one for one straight up because I always want to put that caveat out there. I'm not saying go trade Alvin Kamara for Ezekiel Elliott straight up, but if you can get Ezekiel Elliott and a second round pick back for Alvin Kamara, I'm not opposed to that, especially in a win
Do,
now situation.
Do you know that we have Alvin Kamara together in a dynasty league?
Oh, I forgot about that. But it's best ball. It's best ball. So, we just need a couple of other good players to step up in, presumably weeks 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Um,
So
then
I'm
we're
not letting
good.
you trade Alvin Kamara. I'm just telling you. Uh,
I forgot about that. Oh,
that's all right. All right. Let's. I want to talk about some dynasty holds. I also want to talk about a guy that I'm buying for a little bit. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball. We've got golf tournaments going on. We've got football coming up. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Do you want to mention your dynasty hole before I do my Jameis Winston thing?
honestly, I don't have any.
Okay.
I think the closest I can find to that is a Jarvis Landry, who I think was a great offseason signing, but so many question marks there. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for him to have some surprising games, especially in PPR formats. But um, I'm not really doing anything with Jarvis Landry right now, but I think he could pleasantly surprise. So that's where I'll end it. But
Okay.
again, I want to buy so many of these pieces. So Marcus, tell us about Jameis Winston, because this
Yes.
is one of the ones I'm most interested in hearing about, because I'm totally team Winston. Let's
Yes.
go.
So, full disclosure, I bet on Jameis Winston yesterday to be the comeback player of the year at plus 500, which is phenomenal odds because he's going to win that award. Because the other option is like Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson's not winning
That's
comeback player of the year.
gross.
Yeah.
That is
Uh,
gross.
and the other option is Mitchell Trubisky, who's also not winning it because what is he coming back from? I
From
don't know.
Buffalo. I don't-
From Buffalo. He's coming back from Buffalo. James Winston. In the 5 games, Kate, that he started and finished last year, excuse me, the 6 games that he started and finished last year, he had 13 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, also had a rushing touchdown. The only concern here is the passing volume. He averaged about, I don't know, I mean, it wasn't a ton, about 185 passing yards per game. That had a little bit to do with there was a couple games they had some massive blowouts in, including Green Bay, New England, Washington, that they just didn't need him to throw the ball a lot. I don't think the defense is going to be as good as it was last year. And I think because hopefully Michael Thomas does come back, they've got Jarvis Landry, they got Chris Olave, they're going to open up the passing game a little bit more. So if we can, see this trend of him, having a 2.2 touchdowns per game and limiting the interceptions and giving you at least something as a goal line runner. And okay, there's a legitimate chance that he finishes as like a low end QB1 this season. The offensive line's really good. They kept their same offensive coordinator in Pete Carmichael. And I think the best part of it all is his price tag is so cheap right now. I think he's like quarterback 27, cornerback 28, depending on the rankings you look at. There's just loads and loads of upside here.
So much upside here. And like I want to bring this back to like roster construction for the Saints. Like I think that the moves that the Saints have made, obviously what is this offense going to look like without Sean Payton? Like there are so many different variables here. But I do think it's really interesting to see the investments they made in the receiving game as opposed to the rushing game, even knowing this entire offseason essentially that their star running back could be in for a big suspension. Like
Yes.
they didn't invest in the running back position the same way that they invested in their receiving core, and I think that's super interesting. Jameis Winston ranked 10th in quarterback rating last year, which is just like absolutely
He was
freaking
playing really well.
crazy. He was
And
playing really well.
And that was like here are his leading receivers in the first 5 games of the season. Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, Alvin Kamara, Adam Troutman, and Kenny Stills. Like that was the list. And those guys are all back this year, like, but they're just in reserve roles, and you just got so much more talent. I expect the volume to go up. I mean, I think he could go from 185 passing yards a game to 240 without really breaking much of a sweat. And if he keeps that touchdown rate, okay, we're talking about somebody who could legitimately throw for 4,500 yards and 35 plus touchdowns. I mean, that's a QB1 all day.
That's a QB1 all day, and the risk here again is so minimal. Like, that's what I love about the Saints right now, and they're, like, essentially everybody's value in dynasty leagues because it feels like all of these assets have such big upside, and yet we're not necessarily seeing, that reflected in the price tag. Even Chris Olave currently being drafted as wide receiver 29. For what reason? Like,
Yeah.
I have like, that makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, more than 10 spots ahead of him is Treylon Burks. Like, give me Chris Olave
Right.
over Treylon Burks every
100%.
single day of the week. And when I'm all in on a team's receiving core and those assets, you've got to look back to the quarterback. Jameis Winston has done it so many times. We know the upsides there. And I think there's probably no better asset to buy, especially in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues. Um, yes, all
Yes.
day.
One more thing. This is his 3rd year going into the system. Like, it's not like he's, hasn't been here, doesn't know Pete Carmichael's offense. Like, he's gonna know it and know it well. So, I'm all in. I think he's gonna have a huge year. I saw some of the videos of him looking really slim. He looks healthy.
Doing
Okay, I
his fun
think
little workouts, his little
yeah.
wiggles, and his little
I I'm just saying we, again, I wanna mention this dynasty league that we're together in. I think we should try to make a trade for Jameis Winston right now.
I would
What do you
love
think?
that, and you know what? It's a best ball league, which is, like, the perfect
Perfect.
situation because you get all that upside and none of the risk, baby. I love it. Let's do it. I guess I'm a Saints fan this year. I don't know.
Yes, we are gonna be. I think we need to wear, like, get Saints polos and wear them on the podcast.
Oh
It'd
my
be a lot of
gosh, and,
fun,
like,
right?
maybe some glasses, and I guess that's the jersey I should get, maybe,
Yeah.
that, like, just all Saints gear. I could be the Locked On Saints, hashtag, Ross,
Shout out to Ross. Yeah,
yeah, shout out to the Locked On Saints, podcast. Go go give them a listen because apparently we're a
yeah.
Saints-centric podcast now.
Yes, we are. All right, we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. And while you're listening to the podcast, go check out Locked On Saints, as Kate mentioned. You can follow our show on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. You can check us out over on YouTube. Shows being uploaded every single day over there. Follow Kate at FF Ball Blast, and I'm at Marcus _Mosher. And we'll see you guys right back here tomorrow.